Ciao, jewelry makers. I'm Joey Balistreri, and this is one of the most exciting days of the month because my Bargain Bead Box for November 2023 arrived. This month's theme is called Cozy Chrysanthemums, and I just love what I am seeing. I've unboxed everything, and it is packed with gemstones, mookaite. We got these beautiful dark red crystal rondelles to work with, and I just love those. We got another crystal bead here to work with, and I love the warmth of the gold. This is a beautiful little wired component, and our insert says that you would either be getting a mookaite pendant or a carnelian slice pendant. So mine is mookaite, but I'm assuming everyone's is going to look a little bit different because it is a natural gemstone and it is framed in brass. So I just love that. We did get a few other charms and components. These are beautiful. There were two of those. And I love magnetic clasps. And we got two really nice classic plain magnetic clasps. A little bit of curb chain came in the box. This is unusual. This is an 8mm fossil coral bead, and that is just so gorgeous. So I already have a great idea for a piece. Oh, just loving these two. These are quartz rondelle beads. They are just gorgeous. The faceting gives that warm yellow, a little bit of shimmer. So I have a great idea for what I want to make with my box this month. And so what I'm going to take from here are these mookaite beads in the 8mm. And I think I am going to be focusing on the burgundy deep red colors on this strand. I'm also going to work with these 8x6 faceted rondelle beads. I am going to use at least one of these, maybe two, definitely this mookaite slice, and I love these crystals as well. I'm going to put a little bit of sparkle. I'll gather them all up. So I think from what I have here, I think this is going to be my first piece of jewelry from this box. So let me organize everything and I'll be back and let's make something with it. I am back with an organized mat. I have pulled the items from the box that I plan to use in my design. And this was something I had sketched out in my sketchbook that I keep for my ideas. And what I really wanted to do was have this be one continuous length, sort of an asymmetrical look, because one of the things I know from my years of interior design is that to the human eye, diagonal lines create interest and movement. So that's what I'm trying to do with this necklace. So I want this to sort of hang in an offset way. And I wanted it to be a front closure. So I loved these little brass magnetic clasps, but the problem I was having with it being a front closure and this being a component in the front is that they stick to the component, and I didn't want it to be a constant hassle where this was doing that on the front of the necklace. So the way I'm going to remedy that is to wire wrap one of these 8mm mookaite beads. And as you'll see, I have separated out the dark, really burgundy reds of the mookaite strand, and I'm using my mookaite slice bead. When I get to the end, I'll decide if I'm going to do another flower connector, and then this, I debated about doing something like this. This is in the end going to be a pretty simple stringing project, but you know, those design decisions I will make as I work my way down my necklace. So I really loved these 8x8 glass rondelle. Are they 8x8? No, these are the 9mm. These were the 8x8. But I really love those to add just a little bit of sparkle to my necklace. And we don't have quite enough beads for the design that I wanted to do. So I have pulled in some 80 seed beads that are check glass in this beautiful metallic gold. And I'm going to incorporate that in my stringing pattern. And I'm going to be stringing on this antique brass color metallics from Softflex. It's their medium 49 strand wire. And of the colors that I have in my own supplies, this was really the best color match. But they have a red jasper. They have some other colors that could work with this if you're doing the same thing. And then I'm going to use my magical crimpers because since I'll be crimping here on the front of the necklace and down here, I want a teeny tiny little crimp bead that's unobtrusive. So I'm going to use my number 2 Beadalon crimps for that, and a little tiny piece of 20 gauge gold round German style wire from Beadalon is what I'll use to wire wrap this little bridge between the magnetic clasp and the chrysanthemum flower. So I'm going to start by cutting a length of this bead stringing wire, and I have here about 28 inches in total. And what I'm going to do when I'm stringing, I'm just checking this on my mat, it is a little bit more than 28 inches. So that's what I'm going to start with. And when I begin my pattern and get this strung, I'm going to stop when I have a certain amount of beads on here and just measure it on myself to see where this section is going to land on the front of the necklace. So that is my plan. So let me start by dumping out a few of these seed beads. They're easier to pick up from the mat. And I am also going to unleash this beautiful strand of red beads because I'm probably going to use a lot of them. I haven't exactly worked out my pattern yet, but before I do anything else, I'm going to create a wire wrapped loop for this one mookaite bead, and I will need pliers for that. Let me bring those in. So let me start down on the wire, make my 90-degree bend, get everything straightened out, and bring in my round nose pliers. And before I close this loop up, I want to connect it to that chrysanthemum wired flower. And so on this, all the petals on this component are not exactly perfect. So I need to sort of choose where this is going to connect in my strand when I'm stringing the beads and where my closure is going to be. So I think that looks pretty good. So I think I'll do this one right here, and then the opposite petal on this flower will be strung into my strand. So let me get this closed up. I've told you guys I deal with dyslexia, so sometimes if it feels strange that you see me twisting my pliers back and forth, it's just because it's just a constant thing with me, and it takes me a moment to see what direction I'm going in. And I find that when the camera's going, sometimes I even get a little bit flustered because things are appearing backwards to me, but I usually always get myself together. Okay, I'm going to string on this mookaite bead, and I want this to be going. Let me see how this is going to lay. I need it to be going probably the same direction. That loop is a little crooked, but I'll straighten it up once I get this one on. I cut a little bit too long of a piece of wire, so that's also a little bit in my way, but that's okay. Let's see. I would think I would rather not have a jump ring, so I'm going to go ahead and connect the magnetic clasp too, because I really wanted this to look like a seamless strand of beads, which is why I didn't want to do the clasp in the back of my strung part. Turn my pliers and lock that into place. I love magnetic clasp, but as you can see, it's grabbing onto this component. It's grabbing onto my nose of my pliers, and it's a little bit in my way, but I just tell myself to be patient and I'll get it. And hopefully this will work using one of the Mookaite beads as a go-between so that the magnetic clasp isn't always fighting with that component. I'm just going back and tidying up my loops and my wraps. Get my pliers in there, get my other pliers, and just get around that magnetic clasp and straighten everything. There, that looks really good. And hopefully that's going to give me what I want with my stringing. So now I'm going to bring in my bead stringing wire and get one of these number 2 bead-along crimp tubes. Take a few out. And I am simply going to string one of these on. And I think I can actually go right ahead and connect to my magnetic clasp. So for those of you that don't know how to do this, I put the crimp tube on first on the bead stringing wire, the bead stringing wire through the loop on the magnetic clasp, and then that wire goes back down through the tube. And I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a tail, and I don't want this loop to be super tight to here because I want this to move, because on the necklace it's a front closure, so this is going to be pulled apart. And so I'm going to grab a hold of this and bring in my magical crimping pliers and just get that crimp tube right into the well on these pliers and press down as hard as I can. And when I remove it, you'll see I have something that looks a little bit like a ravioli. And then I'm just going to turn it to the side and fit that right into that well again and press down as hard as I can. And now I'm just going to maintain the position of it in the well and just keep turning it around and pressing down. And so what it's doing, you can even go in the opposite direction. What it's doing is molding that tube into a tiny, perfect round bead. And I love the way this looks, especially when you have opted for a front closure on a necklace. It gives you a really nice, clean, finished, unobtrusive transition right in. So now we can pull on that and it's nice and strong. We have a wire wrapped loop on this end and a nice tight crimped bead on this end. And now we can start our stringing pattern. So I'm going to have to play with this just a little bit because the red beads and these and the Mookaite I don't think will give me enough of the length that I want. So I had an idea of doing a red bead and maybe a seed bead in between each one. And let's see, I think I like to work in odd numbers, so I think I'm going to start with 3 of the red beads, all separated by one of these metallic seed beads, and then see what it looks like with one of these crystals. I may switch to the Mookaite. I'm going to leave that tail if I can. Just easier than cutting it off. So that's kind of pretty. Let me do another section of this and see what I think, see if that's going to be my pattern. And again, the reason I had to do this is because of the desired length. I just couldn't directly string the beads. There just wasn't enough of them to get the length that I wanted. So I probably, if I'd had more of these, would have done this just one solid line, but this sometimes it turns out even prettier than you thought when you start playing. So I'm going to string this up and I will come back and show you what it looks like. So I have finished stringing the first part of the necklace, and I really love the way my pattern is looking. I worked in sections of 3 with the red beads and then interspersed those crystals in between those sections, and everything is separated by one of those 8/0 metallic seed beads. And so in looking at this, I am ready to string this flower component right onto this side, but I am realizing that because of the orientation of the flower, in order for it to lay flat on the front of the wearer and, keep in this direction, I'm going to need a jump ring. So I have this really tiny one because I really want this to look seamless. This is a 4mm jump ring, and I'm just going to open this and add it right to my flower. And then after I have it closed really well, it's going to get strung onto my necklace just as if it were another bead. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to string it right on there. And then I'm going to alter my pattern a little bit here at this intersection by putting a seed bead on the other side of that jump ring. And then I'm going to do the opposite of what I've done here and do 3 red crystals and continue to separate them with one of those metallic seed beads, and then continue down the front part of the necklace with this pattern. And here's where I will play with it a little bit and see if I want to change the pattern and add in more of these mookaite beads. I have them separated out. So here's what we're looking like so far. And then I just have to decide if I want to just continue with my pattern, or if here's where I want to add in some mookaite or simply do one at the bottom. So I'm going to continue stringing and see how it looks, and I will be back to show you the finished design. So I stepped away and tried this on in the mirror, and I love it. I love the length. And in doing that, I also made the design decision that I'm not going to add the second flower at the end of the necklace. It felt a little bit too busy and was taking away some of the elegance and the chic look of this piece. So I am simply going to take that other little scrap of 20 gauge wire and do a wire wrapped loop component here for the end of this drop on the necklace, and then connect my mookaite slice to the bottom of that and just leave this metal chrysanthemum as the focal right on the front of the necklace. So before I do my wire wrapped loop, let's go ahead and close off the necklace here with another one of these number 2 bead-along crimps. So I'm simply going to string that onto the end of my wire, make a little loop, and go back through that crimp tube. If you want to use your pliers to help you do that, you can. And I'm doing it so my fingers are not in the way. And here's where also you don't want this to be pulled really tight. You don't want giant gaps in your stringing material. So I have it sort of bent and twisted here so that it has a nice flow, but I'm checking to make sure that I have no gaps in between my stringing. And that way, I'm also going to try to pull this out and put the tail through a couple of beads. It doesn't really add to the strength, but I like to do it because it gives me a little bit of leverage in pulling that down and getting the loop. And it does go through those seed beads nicely. You grab a hold of it with your pliers and just tighten up that loop and sort of move your beads down, and just want to go slowly and really check this before you crimp it down. Keep moving those beads down. And for the loop here as well, I don't want to make a giant loop. I really want to match it as best I can to the one that I did higher up on the stringing. So before I crimp, I'm just going to take a second and have a look, make sure that I don't have any, just make sure that I don't have any gaps in my stringing and that nothing is twisted and it feels nice and loose. And now I have it where I want it, so I need my magical crimping plier. And I'm just going to take my time. I found when I was learning to use this plier, there was a little learning curve, and when I was trying to go really fast and didn't truly pay attention to what I was doing, I ended up not getting a perfect crimp. But when I just take my time and make sure that that crimp tube is in that well and then squeeze down, I get my perfect ravioli, and then I can turn it sideways and squeeze it in the opposite direction and then just start to rotate all the way around. I think the directions on the package of this said 6 to 8 times, but I just keep going around until I don't feel resistance anymore. And if you feel like it's not perfectly round, you can always reposition and go back in and go around some more. But when you get this right, it's so beautiful. You get this beautiful, perfect little bead. I don't know if you can see. So now I can cut away this excess. So now we can complete our drop. And I just sort of worked out that I'm going to do one of those gold seed beads on a mookaite bead because I have one appearing here and it coordinates so well with the slice pendant. And I think that's all I'm going to do for the drop on this necklace. And I do want to do a wire wrapped loop just to match the one that I did higher up in my bead stringing pattern. So hopefully this little scrap of wire that I cut from before is going to give me the space that I need for that. And I'm going to, before I close it up, I'm going to connect this to my mookaite pendant on this end, and then I'm going to connect the other end before I close it up to this loop that we just made. And that's just to cut down on the jump rings and, just less. Although sometimes you have to assess when you're making a piece, but sometimes a jump ring will give you more freedom of movement. The necklace will just dangle better and move better. So, that is just something that as we're creating, we have to determine it piece by piece, I think. And I will go back and take away my sharp edges after my beads are on because it's just a little bit easier. You have a little bit more to hold on to. And I want to check because I do want my mookaite pendant to be hanging forward. So I'm going to do this loop in the exact same direction as the bottom one. And I did not leave myself a whole lot of wire to do this last loop, but I think I can do it. And if you guys have noticed the ring that I'm wearing, these are 5-minute projects using scraps of wire and a single bead, and they are so easy and so fun to make. And I think that would also make a really fun, easy gift for people. So that video is coming soon. So if you are watching and you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, and I have so much to share with all of you. And this way you won't miss any of my upcoming videos. So that's just one that's coming up, and it is a really fun, very, I would say, beginner friendly. You're just making simple loops with your scraps of wire, and if you're a beginner, maybe you don't have a ring mandrel yet and haven't worked with that may be the only tricky part, but it is a really, really fun and easy project. I sat down and literally was playing with my supplies, and the next thing I knew, I had 6 or 7 rings made, and I decided to make a video with it. So this necklace is now totally complete. I am absolutely in love with it. I will put it on the mannequin and get some pictures up for you. And I also did a super simple pair of earrings to coordinate with my necklace. This is totally basic techniques. I'm using some of the leftover beads I used for each earring, one of these 8mm mookaite, and I pulled out more of those dark ones that match my drop on my necklace, and one of the half matte crystal faceted 9mm beads, and I continued with the little gold seed beads that I had used, and a ball head pin, and these beautiful wreath. It looks like a chandelier component. It actually is. It's gold plated pewter, and it is just a beautiful component, and it doesn't even appear that it has a right or a wrong side. So it is a super simple pair of earrings to make. I'm just continuing with the pattern idea that I had here. So one of those beads, this little metallic seed bead, and one of those, and I'm going to do a simple loop with my one-step looper, just pulling it back a little bit to make sure that I don't put any stress on my beads. And then what's a simple open and close, and connect this to that wreath component, and then connect the ear wire to the other end. So this is just a beautiful, simple, elegant. It feels very festive. It feels like something we could wear to a formal dinner party or some kind of an outing. And as I said, there's really no front or back, and even stringing the beads onto the head pin, they're full circle. There's no front or back. So it is a super simple, quick and easy coordinating pair of earrings to go with our necklace. So I hope this inspired you guys to do something fabulous with your bargain bead box this month, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, jewelry makers.